Hello again. Today we're going to be looking at a movie from the filmography of one of my favorite filmmakers to dive into, Roger Corman. The ultimate king of schlock and B-movie filmmaking, Roger Corman is a guy who has put out many cult classics, has given the start to some of many of today's most famous filmmakers, and makes up a good chunk of my DVD collection. Although, to be fair, a lot of the movies under the Roger Corman's cult classics are films he didn't personally direct, but did play a big part in making, mostly as a producer. Today's movie is one of his most famous cult classics, a film that, even if you're not into the cult classic scene, you more or less have probably heard the title, Death Race 2000. A well-paced, well-shot action comedy exploitation gore-fest with a little bit of political satire.
People line the streets to witness the greatest drivers on Earth in a race from sea to shining sea. Every car a deadly weapon. Every spectator a potential point.
The film apparently came about because Roger Corman wished to take advantage of the advanced publicity for another death sport movie, Rollerball. And funny enough, Death Race 2000 actually managed to get filmed and released before Rollerball even hit fucking theaters.
Fuckers are fast, too.
The film was loosely based on a short story called The Racer by Ib Melchior. After Roger Corman attempted to write the original script treatment, which he thought was too dark, he brought on Robert Thom to write the script. The film's director, Paul Bartel, took issue with Thom's script, so they then brought on Corman's longtime writing collaborator, Charles B. Griffith. Both men ended up sharing co-screenwriting credit.
Part of a team.
Paul Bartel, the director of Death Race 2000, is a guy who went on to direct another pretty twisted comedy, Eating Raoul, as well as another car crash film for Corman, also starring David Carradine, Cannonball. Many would probably know Paul Bartel best as an actor, having parts in Corman productions such as Chopping Mall, Rock and Roll High School, and Joe Dante's later film, Gremlins 2: The New Batch, and most notably in Bryan Singer's The Usual Suspects. As the title says, the film takes place in the futuristic year of 2000. Hey, it was the 70s. They had very warped ideas of what the future would look like. And the future appears to be a bit of a 1984 style future, ruled by a dictatorish president, who everybody just calls Mr. President.
My children, whom I love so dearly.
I have made the United Provinces of America the greatest power in the known universe.
Once more, I give you what you want.
Mr. President, played by Sandy McCollum, rules over America with a heavy fist and is responsible for creating the most popular racing event in the country,
The Transcontinental Road Race.
or as many characters simply call it,
Death Race.
You finish first, or not at all.
where 5 racers go across the country from East Coast to West Coast, and all the racers gain points for how many innocent civilians they can run over.
Too bad the guy was only 38. Just 2 years older, he'd have been worth 3 times the points.
And the amount of points you get depends on the gender and age of the people you run over.
Women are still worth 10 points more than men in all age brackets. Anyone, any sex, over 75 years old has been upped to 100 points.
And while this is going on, there's a resistance run by a woman named Thomasina Paine, descendant of Thomas Paine.
Get it?
Played by Harriet Medden, who is out to stop the transcontinental road race by any means necessary to obliterate the violence, even by committing violence. And while she does say in 1 or 2 scenes she doesn't want violence, she doesn't really work that hard to stop it.
We're set to hit him with everything we've got.
Then, in the name of humanity, let Operation Anti-Race begin.
So this group works to stop this horrible thing going on by pretty much doing what they're condemning and many other shady actions. So basically, social justice warriors that kill. The 5 racers traveling across country, trying to hit as many dumb fucks as they can, are all giving different nicknames and styles and special souped up cars based on their personalities. We got Nero the Hero, played by post-Last House on the Left but pre-Karate Kid Martin Kove, and his decently racked navigator, Cleopatra, played by Leslie McRae.
Stop blocking me. My fans want to see me.
They've never seen a has-been before?
Next up is Matilda the Hun, played by Roberta Collins, and her sidekick, Herman the German, played by Fred Grandy. Their theme, Nazism.
You can expect a victory by a member of the master race, a woman.
Today, California.
Tomorrow, the world.
Next up is Calamity Jane Kelly, played by Mary Warnove of Rock and Roll High School, playing a very different and more appealing character, with her navigator, Pete, played by William Shepard.
My luck with my lovers gets any better, I'll miss the race completely. Isn't that right, Pete?
And then we get, and I know this may sound dumb in a movie where all the main characters are trying to kill innocent people, but we get the film's primary antagonist, Machine Gun Joe Viterbo.
Machine Gun Joe, loved by thousands, hated by millions.
Played by Sylvester motherfucking Stallone.
Lousy sons of bitches.
1 year before Rocky, with his sidekick, the ditzy blonde Myra, played by Louisa Moritz.
Give it to them, Joe.
And last but not least, we have the primary and the most popular racer of the death race, Frankenstein, played by David Carradine.
You will regret that, Joe.
And his navigator, the mysterious Annie Smith, played by Simone Griffith.
I have the route maps right here.
I will check them in a minute.
Once the race begins, they're all off, knocking down motherfuckers left and right. Their kills being commented on by local anchors Junior Bruce, played by Don Steele.
For the second year in a row, Machine Gun Joe has splattered the scoreboard first.
Grace Pander, played by Joyce Jameson.
Those doctors, dear friends of mine, Frankenstein must have decided it was their turn.
And Harold, played by Carl Benson, a parody of Howard Cosell.
At this very moment, the cars are howling through the streets of Manhattan, but no points have been scored as yet.
From here we get all sorts of fun sequences, such as the Resistance lowering Nero to his ultimate death with a bomb baby.
Come get baby.
Bye-bye, baby. Hello, 70 points.
Calamity Jane with her bull car going up against a matador. Played by fellow Roger Corman filmmaking student and future big director Louis Teague, who would go on to direct Cujo, Alligator, Cat's Eye, The Jewel of the Nile, Navy SEALs, and many more. Also appearing very early in his movie career, before he even had his first real hit film, John Landis plays a mechanic.
They're off! Frankenstein, holy Chrysler! Joe has just scored his own pit crew!
Hell, even Paul Bartel has a cameo, playing Frankenstein's doctor.
The patient has been flown in from abroad in a state of suspended animation in order to facilitate the healing of his recent limb transplants.
We also get a fun sequence where Thomasina Payne hacks into the nationwide broadcast and gives a message about how they plan to take down Mr. President.
For 20 years, Americans have been told when to eat and when to sleep. The age of obedience is over.
And in a funny moment calls the whole thing the Transcontinental Road Rape.
Desecration of life and liberty. The Transcontinental Road Rape.
Maybe it's because she's an old bitch, but I don't know, I just thought it was funny. The scenes of the cars going down the highways and local roads, whether it's to kill or not, look amazing. This is all owed to great cinematography by Tak Fujimoto, who had previously done work on Terrence Malick's Badlands, and would later go on to do the cinematography for The Silence of the Lambs, The Sixth Sense, and Signs. And of course, chase sequences on the road are nothing without decent editing, which we get here by Tina Hirsch, who would later go on to do Joe Dante's Gremlins. As for the gore in this film, there's no denying the blood looks pretty cartoony, but no more than the blood in George Romero's Dawn of the Dead, and some of the gore moments go by a little too quickly. There is some impressive effects work put into them. Most notably, a scene where a guy gets his head run over, two guys standing in a manhole gets cut in half, a bit where a guy gets his nuts sliced open, all of them done by Sylvester Stallone. As the most recognizable actor in Death Race 2000, Sylvester Stallone just nails it as the film's villain. He's brutal, he's angry, he's always yelling, he gets some one-liners.
Some people might think you're cute, but me, I think you're one very large baked potato.
And some genuine moments that make you hate him.
You're hurting me, Joe.
There's nobody to hear you. How does it feel to know you're going to spend the rest of your life in pain? The rest of your life. It's about a minute and a half.
Stallone and Carradine apparently did most of their driving in their souped-up death cars, while most of the driving done for long-distance shots, particularly on public streets, was done by Roger Corman himself. The custom cars were not street legal, and the stunt drivers didn't want to get caught driving them by police.
Matilda's buzz bomb is trying to catch up with Machine Gun Joe, now streaking southwest.
As for David Carradine as Frankenstein, Frankenstein, they say, is the only winner of the race to come back more than once.
Is it true that with your new mechanical arm, you can shift gears in less than a 20th of a second?
And he wears a mask covering his face that no one has ever seen.
Except my other navigators.
And they're all dead.
And the thing about the navigators, next to navigating and being the sidekicks, they also serve to more or less be the main racers' fuck toys when they break for the night.
Is that the arm that came off in '98?
Mm-hmm.
Which one of those obviously perfect legs was it that came off in '99?
They're right.
Frankenstein's latest navigator, Annie Smith. From the get-go, there's a weird vibe about her.
I'm trained as a nurse.
I don't need a nurse. I need a navigator.
Mr. Frankenstein, you're very good at what you do, and I'm very good at what I do.
We later find out that she's actually the granddaughter of Thomasina Paine.
But she's no match for Frankenstein.
My granddaughter will succeed.
They start their trip out, both with their missions in mind. Frankenstein determined to win the race, Annie determined to get him to where he needs to be, and without really intending to, they start to grow close to each other. At first, kind of just by a strong sexual attraction. After Annie gets to see his face, in a pretty not too over-the-top funny moment. It makes you think that J.J. Abrams might have stolen this for The Force Awakens.
What'd you expect? Another pretty face?
And while it's obviously forced and done just for the sake of getting some TNA on the screen, David Carradine and Simone Griffith really worked well together.
She got a great ass! And you got your head all the way up it! Ferocious, aren't I?
Simone Griffith in this film looks incredible. And David Carradine, for a guy who was 39 at the time, he looks pretty damn good. For a film that is as silly as Death Race 2000, their romance is pretty believable. It's just, it all comes down to their chemistry.
Why don't you ever take off that glove? What's underneath it?
That's my secret.
A little behind the scenes notes on the Frankenstein character. Originally, Peter Fonda was offered the role, but he thought the film was too ridiculous for words. David Carradine took the role because he felt now that Kung Fu was over, he needed a movie right away to keep his career going. And despite being desperate for a movie, and despite the fact that the film only had a $300,000 budget, Carradine refused to wear leather, pushing costume designer Jane Room to make his outfit out of a fabric that was made to look like leather. Props to her for pulling that off, but come on, man. It's a low-budget movie. Save the diva act for Quentin Tarantino's films. The next racer to die is Matilda the Hun after running over Calamity Jane's navigator.
Cream that Nazi's ass for her.
What you say? Blitzkrieg! Nobody scores my navigator and gets away with it.
In a sequence that, while funny, does make me wonder, would she really fall for this shit? I mean, would she even care about a fucking detour? And we see government agents working on behalf of Mr. President to convince the public that everything going on is not by the resistance, that the resistance doesn't even exist.
Who mentioned anything about rebels? There are no rebels. Understand?
A lot of talk about American rebels. We have positive proof that it was none other than the treacherous French who have been sabotaging our great race, just as they and their stinking European allies have undermined and destroyed our great national economy.
Yeah, the French are apparently the scapegoats here. The government agents try to convince the racers to go with these lies and propaganda while they're all having dinner, and in a weird moment, Machine Gun Joe is just sloppily eating his food like a 3-year-old.
2 words to say about that. Bullshit!
The next day is the final lap of the race, and it's all down to Frankenstein, Machine Gun Joe, and Calamity Jane. And we see Calamity Jane with probably the most human moment of any of the racers.
It's been really grand racing with you folks. I also want to say that I think you make a real nice couple.
Thank you, Jane.
Leading to what I believe is the only real racer death that kind of makes me feel bad. And well, yeah, they all are running down innocent people. Calamity Jane, I can't help it. She's just too sweet, and her death was the one that made me feel the most sad. At this point, Frankenstein now knows who Annie is, but he still brings her along. And aside from a moment where he drugs her so that she doesn't interfere with him while he tries to dodge the resistance, we see that they have become very close.
Annie's dead, Mrs. Payne. He must have killed her.
The part where the resistance tries to get Frankenstein is probably the most impressive action sequence in the film, considering the low budget they had to work with.
Well, America, there you have it. Frankenstein has just been attacked by the French Air Force.
If you just stop trying to kill me for a minute, I need your help.
How can you possibly expect me to help you?
And then we find out that Frankenstein is actually himself trying to kill Mr. President.
What?
And he's been playing up his role as the main racer and Mr. President's favorite person, just so he can get close to him. And how's he gonna kill him?
Only the winner of the race is to shake hands with Mr. President.
Is that a grenade?
A hand grenade.
Sure. Why not?
But because she's fallen for the rubber-wearing would-be martyr, Annie takes his grenade hand and uses it to take out Joe and Myra. Well, Rocky's dead. So unclear just how they're gonna take him out. Annie and Frankenstein head in to finish the race and meet Mr. President. Upon showing up, Frankenstein gets out of the car, his right hand mysteriously fixed, heads up to the podium, and takes out a switchblade. But before Frank can take out Mr. President, Thomasina shows up and shoots.
Frankenstein has been
shot! There is a French spy in our midst!
The president, his men, take off the mask. How they miss the different body figure is your own guess, but Frankenstein, not willing to give up, runs his car right into the podium and... the crowd, surprisingly, is pretty okay with this. And they immediately get behind Frankenstein, because he's the man, I guess. And a pretty abrupt but awesome and fucking funny jump cut. Frankenstein and Annie have married, and he is now the new president.
Mr. and Mrs. President Frankenstein.
Changing the politics that the evil president before had put forth.
What about the race?
The race is abolished.
Abolished?
That's right.
And a fitting way to end the film, where Frankenstein and Annie are trying to leave on their honeymoon. Junior blocks their path and yells,
Sure it's violent, but that's the way we love it! Violent, violent, violent!
And keeping in tune with the Resistance hypocritical way of doing things, where they preach up against the violence, but then do it when it suits their own need.
Do we have to listen to this?
Be violent!
No.
And Harold, surprisingly, seems shocked and disturbed by Junior's death, and then gives a monologue over the end credits about how violence existed even before people started thinking.
Murder was invented even before man began to think. Now, of course, man has become known as the thinking animal.
So, all in all, I really love Death Race 2000. It is a straight-up exploitation film. There are some surprisingly well-done commentary and satire moments, although just how seriously you're supposed to take it is debatable. David Carradine, in his first major role after Kung Fu, it was a pretty good first film post-TV show, and he would do many more films for Corman, one of them being the not so official, but considered a spin-off movie, Death Sport.
I can survive your death sport.
David Carradine conquers the Death Sport.
Directing is solid, writing is very funny, editing, while not perfect, is pretty good, and cinematography is just incredible. Shows that Dutch angles can be good when it's not in the hands of the idiots who did Battlefield Earth. On the 10-star scale, I give Death Race 2000 an 8.5. It is fucking awesome. Go check it out. If you're oversensitive to things like nudity and gore, then this movie ain't for your bitch ass. See you again soon.
I'll do it. I won't do it. I'd be a schmuck to do it. I did it, I'm no schmuck!